Hello, it's Jabria, calling this channel Jabria Jabbers, and I'm going to be doing a book review of this book, The Reappearance of Rachel Price by Holly Jackson. I will say before I get started that does she have like a name for her fans? I'm well read. I'm well versed in the universes of Holly Jackson. I read the entirety of a Good Girl's Guide to Murder series, and I watched the series premiere on Netflix. I've also read Five Survivor, the book. I haven't read Killjoy for some reason. I think that one must have passed me up, and so I'm already kind of like a fan and biased. We'll jump right into it. I think I'd like to rate books out of five being the best, one being the worst. I would give this book 5 stars in terms of the like a teenage mystery novel. I think it's certainly one of the best ones that I've read for this genre. So basically what this is about is a 18-year-old high school student has grown up in the shadow of her mother's disappearance. Her mother mysteriously disappeared 16 years ago, and none of the police or none of the feds, I don't think the feds were involved, I don't know, maybe, all the people online, basically no one has figured out the mystery, how she disappeared. And so she's grown up in the shadow of that. And now where this book starts off, as you can kind of see, it starts off doing interviews with this documentary crew, and they're trying to figure out the storyline of what happened and just get the gist of what happened and do a documentary. The reason that they finally took this documentary, because I was wondering that, why did they take this documentary on after 16 years, is because her father needed money to pay for his father's 24-hour care, because his father, or the main character's grandfather, has had strokes, and he needs to have 24-hour care so that, you know, he is healthy and safe all the time. And so the dad takes this documentary deal so that he can afford to pay for the care of the grandfather. And so some things that I really like about this book, there will be spoilers from here on out, by the way. A few things that I like about this book, let me adjust this, I feel like it's weird. A few things that I like about this book are the ways in which that the author describes the main character's how do you say that? She's a kleptomaniac. I think that's how you pronounce it. She likes to take things. I love how she describes it. I also love how, even though that's a thing that she does, collect things, a kleptomaniac, it's not a huge part of the book. Like, eventually she stops doing it because these things, these different disorders that we have, these are a result of trauma. And once you start healing and addressing that trauma, then you no longer have these disorders, because the disorders are just symptoms of larger things that are at play. And so I really like the way that the author writes about it. Excuse me. She describes it as a twisting in the gut a lot. And I'd like to talk about that, because the gut is a place that we associate with our intuition. We associate the gut with just our inner knowing, claircognizance. And every time she gets the urge to collect something, to steal something, it's described as a twisting in the gut. Later in the story, when there's a reappearance of Rachel Price, when her mother comes back from the dead later on in the book, there's this twisting in her gut because she doesn't fully believe the story that her newly found mother is saying, is saying to the police, is saying to her. She doesn't believe it, and she describes it as a twisting in the gut. So there's like this association with the gut from her being a kleptomaniac and and then her relationship with her mother and not trusting her mother. And oddly enough, she doesn't get that twist in her gut when it comes to her father, I don't think. I just finished reading this last night, so hopefully my memory is still good about it. Something else that I really liked in how they described her, like they gave her appearance right off the bat, like the blonde hair, how it was cut, but they don't describe a lot about this character's body, which is something that I've seen in a lot of books that are written from the perspective or with the main character being a female, especially a teenage female. They talk about their body a lot, like there's always so much emphasis on the body, but they don't go into so much emphasis on the body or even what this character is wearing. And I like that because then there's this sense of she's wearing what her mood is. You have to go based on her mood because there's a lot of descriptions of her speech and her reactions to people and her personhood. And so you go based on, okay, what kind of person is she and what kind of person would wear, this person would wear this, this, and this. I don't know, you kind of like make it up in your mind. Another thing that I really liked is the description of the town, the setting in which this book takes place. I don't like when authors go so much into detail about the description of places. I get bored and I think it's a waste of time, and what I'll end up doing is just skipping the pages. But I didn't do that in this book. I'm pretty sure I read every single page. I think I might have skipped like some paragraphs when I was in a rush to figure out who would say what or what would be revealed. But I like that. It was just enough. It's kind of the same with the body type. Something else I want to talk about is the relationships dynamic. Relationship dynamics in this book. I really liked how her relationship with her father was established, kind of secondary almost to the documentary crew. Like the first thing you do is you establish a relationship with Belle herself, and then it's Belle versus like the world as they knew it, who would be watching this documentary. And then you get her grandmother that comes in, and then you get her dad. So I guess not secondary, third-dairy. Oh, but I love the relationships that she has with people, and I love that they changed and progressed over the course of the story, because I've read a lot of books about teenagers, specifically teenage girls, and what I don't like is whenever the relationships are basically the same at the end, specifically with family. It's almost like family is like this background noise to whatever romance or whatever platonic relationship is playing out in the teenagers' lives. But I have always found that to be very ingenuine to real life, because that's not how my life was when I was a teenager. The family had a huge impact on the way in which I went about my life in the world. And so I love the emphasis on family. I didn't expect that, although I should have, with the title of the book being about her missing mother. So I really like the description and the initial dynamic between Belle and her father, whose name is Charlie Price. It seemed at the start and for most of the book very like non-parent child dynamic. It felt more like homeboy homegirl kind of dynamic, and then manipulative. Something that the father really liked to do in this book was manipulate his daughter by gaslighting her. 1 second. He would manipulate his daughter by gaslighting her and asking her, did you break this? Did you forget this? Making her slowly not trust her gut, which was a huge thing, like I said, throughout the story about her gut, a twisting in her gut, a pulling in her gut, a knot in her gut, making her go crazy. So it's like he pretended to be like this friendship kind of level with his daughter. Like they had a very like chill, she'd say, we never argued, he didn't ground me, he didn't chastise me. Like it was a very chill, very trustworthy kind of connection. But that wasn't true, because whenever she attempted to be her full, autonomous, authentic self, he would cut in with these very unassuming gaslighting and manipulation techniques, which, as we know, people who are manipulators are very good at. One thing that I didn't like, which I don't know, probably couldn't fit in this book, especially if it's not a series, was that they didn't really go into, I feel like, the father's psyche very much. It's just something I would just like to be extra added, maybe like a bonus chapter, or I don't know. I just feel like I wish there was some sort of like little part about the father and how he became like this. Obviously, they eventually reveal that the dad witnessed his father kill his mother, which I feel like is a very traumatizing event, and then he kept that secret for years. But I feel like I wish I could have gotten like just a little bit more of like the father's thought process outside of Belle, just what he was like as a teenager, what his conversations were like with himself. They did mention like these little things that he did. For example, he took a trip to a Taco Bell with his daughter and then left her in the car for like 3 hours while he went and slept with another woman during the time his wife was missing. And then he lied to her and told her, manipulated her, told her he was only gone for 10 minutes, even though he'd left her in the car for hours. Like, the people who have these types of personalities, these disorders, it's a pattern. And I wanted more of proof that this was a pattern. Like, it just would be just these one shots besides the verbal, you know, the auditory manipulation. I would have liked more examples of like he did these things in patterns, and not just in these relationships but other relationships, because that's usually, it tends to be the way that these disorders function. Some sort of I would say like advanced narcissism or something like that. I haven't taken psychology courses in years, but these people, I feel like they tend to see other people as beneath them, lesser than them, and this is something that applies all across the board. And I would have liked a peek into this being all across the board. Her relationship with her cousin Carter, who at the end we find out is her sister, that was a nice twist. I didn't see that coming. I feel like more experienced people, even though I'm a very experienced reader, would have seen that coming. But I didn't see that coming. I feel like it was very obvious now, like when I look back, that they were gonna be sisters, but I didn't catch that. I was just annoyed. That's because of my own experiences in life. But I really loved her dynamic with Carter. And at first I was kind of upset because they seemed so close at the beginning, but then in a good chunk of the book in the middle, when she was getting into the mystery, Belle would only hang out with the camera crew guy, Ash, that she had a romantic thing with, instead of Carter. And I was like, that's weird, because if that's your one friend, if that's your best friend, your cousin, then wouldn't that person be the one you call? Why aren't you calling her? But then it made sense later on. It's because they were kind of like trying to do that, or Holly Jackson was setting it up for a larger reveal, you know, because if they had been hanging out, it didn't serve the plot, basically. But I do wish that there would, I don't know, I don't know if I like Carter all that much. I feel like she's just very bland, but I feel like it makes sense for a 15-year-old girl who has like a big cousin or a big sister. She kind of goes with the flow of whoever is influenced her the most at the time, and so it makes sense that she doesn't really have a personality of her own. When she's with Belle, she's more feisty, she's more witty, she's more sarcastic. I feel like when she's with her friends, it's described as like a clique, a group sort of setting. And when she's with her aunt and when she's with her mom, she just kind of goes with whatever they're doing. So I really can't chastise that too much. Obviously, I would say the last kind of relationship maybe not the last, but I do want to go into the relationship with her mother, Belle, and obviously Rachel Price. I loved it. I loved how she hated her mother at the start. And then when she came back, I loved that she hated her more and was so suspicious of her. And I love how at the end she had about like 2 minutes to decide whether or not to trust her mother, who she previously detested, or to believe her father, who she previously loved. And I loved how she flipped and chose her mother in that instinct, because she realized how much she had been manipulated by her father. And I love that, because it's like it's a social critique on how, when you are raised in a male-dominated society, when you are raised in a male-dominated world or atmosphere, you are trained to always criticize and mistrust and gaslight women or the feminine. Like, we see this all the time. You watch movies, you know, where there's dates gone wrong and stuff like that, and we immediately blame the victim. Well, she shouldn't have been there. She shouldn't have been wearing this. Why did she do that? Instead of blaming the abuser. Why did he do that? Why did they do that? They shouldn't have assaulted that person. They shouldn't have hit that person. It's not the victim's fault that they were an easy target. And so I feel like this book did it perfectly. Excel, that's why it's 5 out of 5, because that transition from being kind of having the wool pulled over your head, kind of being blind and being so caught up in what you've been taught, what you've been trained, what you've been manipulated to believe, that transition into the truth, into what is right and doing what's right. And it just made me love the Rachel character so much more, although, you know, I wish she would have just told Belle at the start what was happening and made a plan with her from there. But you also have to remember, this is coming from a mother, and mothers also tend to have their own egos and their own beliefs, that they think that their way is the best way as well. And I love how she brought that up in the book, Rachel, and made that a point and apologized for that, and said she should have just involved you at the start and trusted that they would be able to handle that information that was the truth. I think finally I want to talk about the twists. I love how the author Holly kept like just giving little bitty pieces to the story, like forcing you to continue reading, forcing you to be hungry, be hungry for the truth. Because I feel like a lot of books, they do this trope, these mystery books about teenagers, they do this thing where they give you, like, you solve the mystery, or you think for sure you solve the mystery throughout the book, and then it gets disproven, and then you solve it, and then it gets disproven. That don't happen in this book. She doesn't solve the mystery. She has no idea what's going on. She just keeps picking up little breadcrumbs, little clues until the end. And even then, when she knows the truth and when she finds out the truth, there is more to the truth. And I feel like that is also very realistic, because I feel like in life, like, things aren't black and white. It's never just this one thing. There's different perspectives. There's different sides of the story. And I liked that about this book, that there were truths that the villains didn't know were truths. I love that there were multiple villains, and I love how it touched on domestic violence, domestic abuse, in a way that was extremely threatening and yet so subtle. I love how it touched on issues of body image, body shaming. Loved all of that. I will say one part that was kind of unbelievable, maybe not, depending on people, but the fact that Carter's mom, or Sherry, like just believed everything Rachel said. But I feel like if you go from the perspective of Sherry, someone who is very ungrounded, I feel like very much insecure within herself and needs outside people to tell her where to go and to give her that sense of approval, it makes sense then, especially if you have 3 people that are telling the truth. So it kind of like double downs. I love that Holly double downs on manipulation. It's like the whole time the 3 women, or 3 girls and women, Rachel, Belle, and Carter, they're all manipulated by other people, and then at the end they're the ones manipulating a woman. And it helps because, like I said, it's a group thing, the same way it was a group thing when all the men were manipulating the 3 women and, you know, the girl that I mentioned. If that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. Yes, this book is all about gaslighting and manipulation, and how those can literally change a person's, they can dictate a person's personality and physiological structures in their brain. I'm probably not even using the words right, but that's what I want to say. I would say I love the romantic relationship. I love how it was so like, it wasn't so deep. It was just like this little thing. So like the grand finale, the grand slam of this book review, I would say this book made me feel very anxious, feel very kind of disgusted, even though I couldn't put my finger on why. Like, it was hard to read in that way because it made me feel so uncomfortable. Like I said, it pushed me to read it, pushed me to finish it. And so I feel like you only get those emotions that like that, feeling like that, with very, very good writing, which I do think Holly Jackson did. I think she's done her homework and she's had lots of practice, and I feel like she's only gotten better. So yeah, 5 out of 5. 5 out of 5 for me. I think she did a wonderful job. I loved all the little notes that she did, the handwritten notes that she included in her work, which she's done before in A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. I loved it. I thought it was very good, and I think also the mystery itself is brilliant. Okay, so let me know in the comments if you've read this book. Subscribe. I didn't say that. Go ahead and subscribe. Subscribe. Let me know in the comments if you've read this book. What do you think about it? Like, share, and I'll see you next time. Bye.